It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. Pete Francis alongside Willie Witten. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Blues Rock Show. Willie, this week, Blues Rock Review will be unveiling the top 20 albums of 2021, and that's decided by a 50% fan vote and 50% staff vote, so people like you and me and the rest of the Blues Rock Review staff. Kind of looking back at this year, I want to talk about sleeper albums, underrated albums. When you look at 2021, what are some albums, Willie, that you feel have kind of flown under the radar?
Well, I think the first one that comes to mind, and I've always been very, very big on her as a musician, as an artist, and just also a purveyor and someone who really keeps the blues alive off of Joe Bonamassa's Keeping the Blues Alive record label. Don't go to sleep on Joanna Connor's 4801 South Indiana. It's awesome. We had her on the show earlier this year. I think it's one of those albums that can be forgotten because it came out early.
It did come out earlier in the year, yeah.
Don't go to sleep on that. It's awesome. If you want to have the sound of what that Chicago grit and just fiery music was about, put into modern day, that is the album. Please don't forget that one. And then I'd also say, Pete, that I think maybe doesn't get as much press because he's a little lesser known. Eddie Ninevolt in Little Black Flies. He threads sort of the in-between of blues, soul, even a bit of like odd psychedelic undertones. He's new-ish. He's not all that well known, but I think one day he will be. And I think it starts with this album. I thought it was great. Pete, what other ones am I going to sleep on and forgetting?
Well, I would definitely agree with you on Eddie Ninevolt. He's only 24 years old, so he's a young guy. He's released 2 albums up to this point. I would totally agree with you on that one. He's got that really cool retro, old school soul sound. And I think he's one of those artists, when people hear him, they're like, oh, whoa, who is that? But right now, he doesn't have a huge audience yet. He's kind of building that up. He's really early in his career, but definitely a guy flying under the radar. And I think when people hear him, they're like, yeah, this guy, he's legit. Another album that sticks out to me as being a little under the radar this year is Now or Nowhere by The Damn Truth. And they're out of Canada. Amazing rock band. Leela Baum, great singer. Yeah. I think it's one of the best albums of the year. And I think they're a band that's going to continue to get more noise or make more noise over the coming years. Kind of building there. I think it's really this album. They've been around for a little while, but I think it's kind of this album where we've really kind of started to hear about them, Willie.
Yeah.
Another band that sticks out to me this year in terms of being a little underrated, Ghost Hounds. They released A Little Calamity. I think that's a great album. A lot of good songs on there. We had Trey Nation on the Blues Rock Show earlier this year. I think that's a band that more people need to know about. They have had some good moments, though. They've been opening for the Rolling Stones this year. Ever heard of them? So, I mean, I would say that's definitely awesome, but I think there's still a band that more people need to know about.
Right.
And I say this all the time, but they're just like chronically underrated. Robert John and the Wreck. They put out Shine a Light on Me, Brother this year. Another fantastic album, might be their best album. And this is just a band that I feel like needs more attention, Willie, especially here in the United States. I just don't feel like they get enough love here.
Right. No, I agree. They definitely, it's almost criminally underrated in their case. They're excellent. And I think also what's each of these bands that we've mentioned so far, I think, you know, when you talk about Trey Nation, we had him on, Joanna Connor, Eddie Ninevolt. There's such a presence to these bands. It's that je ne sais quoi, that just different feel that when they take the stage, when they are on your record player, when you are listening to them, they have that presence, Pete, and people hear it and they know it, but it's just a matter of getting the word out. Pete, I'm going to throw out one other name that I'm surprised that you didn't throw out, but I think you're going to agree with me. Another guy who gets overlooked. What about Blue House?
Yeah, definitely Blue House. It's funny, Will. I was just thinking about Blue House. I was like, oh, I forgot to mention him. So yeah, Blue House is another one. He released his debut album this year. Another guy we've had on the Blues Rock Show. He released a bunch of singles, a lot of cool music videos this year. Man, he is super, super underrated. A lot of people need to know more about him. He released his debut album. He's from the Berklee College of Music, originally from Argentina, moved to the United States. But yeah, this is a guy that's super talented, writes great songs, and just needs more people to hear his music. So Blue House is another underrated artist that people definitely should check out, Willie.
Yeah. Moving on, as we get to this end of the year, Spotify, who I think everyone now in the music world has a love-hate relationship with.
Yeah.
They have, of course, come out and released their end of year list, the top tracks, the top this, who gets the most clicks, the spins. I don't know.
Well, they released those photos for those art. All the artists can release that photo that lists like, okay, this is how many streams they've gotten over the course of the year. And this time of the year, Will, you see lots of artists releasing that.
Does that move the needle for you in any way, shape, or form, Pete? Do you care? Do you think it's silly? Does it aggravate you? I mean, for me, I don't care all that much.
Personally, I like seeing the stats.
Okay.
I like the numbers. I think that's cool. I think it's unique to see, oh, okay, this artist had X amount of streams this year. I think it's pretty neat. I think it's pretty cool. And it's interesting, especially from like our perspective with Blues Rock Review. It kind of gives you a measuring stick, like, okay, and this is how popular, this band has been. This is how popular this band has been. That's kind of interesting. I don't know if you can 100% say, okay, this band is more popular than this band because they got more streams. But I think it is an interesting measuring stick, and it is an interesting tool to kind of gauge that. One other interesting thing, though, Willie, that we've been seeing while these posts go out there is a lot of artists, they put this out there and they're like, oh, thanks for a great year, blah, blah, blah. But then you get this other crowd and then these other artists that say, hey, friendly reminder, Spotify doesn't pay artists anything. And so that's interesting that you get that, because I think you have some of these artists that, okay, they're like, well, Spotify is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. We're going to embrace the platform. Okay, we got X amount of streams this year. And you still have some other artists that are like, hey, wait a minute, guys. Spotify doesn't pay anyone. The artists aren't making any money on Spotify. Why are we celebrating them? Why are we promoting them when Spotify still isn't taking big steps to actually help the artist?
Yeah, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't relationship that a lot of these artists have with Spotify. If you're not Billie Eilish, if you're not Jay-Z, if you're not these huge names, it's not doing a lot for you financially. Maybe it gets your music out there, but at the same time, there are a couple streaming services that do, give a better rate. Still not great, but we're talking multiples of what Spotify does. The problem is they're so big now, they get to go ahead and make the rules.
And I feel like, Willie, we can have this conversation forever. But one thing we've talked about before when mentioning Spotify is, what other business hasn't technology changed?
Right.
Technology has changed everything.
Yeah.
And those who adapt thrive, and those who don't adapt die. And we've kind of seen this, and there still are a group of artists out there that are like, hey, Spotify, we're not going to play their game. And it's like, well, you kind of do have to adapt to the times. You're going to get left behind. Okay. Artists are not making money off of album sales anymore. That's the way it is now for the most part. Okay. There are a select few artists that can actually make money from physical product. So what are you doing to adapt, and change your business model so you can succeed?
Without being defeatist, I think that this past year and a half with the pandemic, this would have been, if there were a make or break time where people could have said, hey, we are done with this garbage, or we are going to take a stand. This was the time period, because like you said, physical sales don't drive the industry. It's merch, it's shows. But here's the crazy thing. When you go through a pandemic and you can't play any shows, I would have thought that this would have been the time where it would have come into great, sharp focus.
Well, actually, I think this is kind of a time where it would have made Spotify stronger. Because, what else do you have? You're at home. People I mean, you need the internet to connect. Spotify is that streaming outlet that gets your music out there. You can't play a live show. So you can't even do that. You can't even tour, which was the thing, which is the thing where artists can actually make some money these days,
right,
is touring. And you didn't even have that. So I think in many respects, that actually made Spotify stronger, Willie.
Pete, I guess you're right. I didn't look at it from that angle, but you're right. How are you going to get the music? And it's going to go through Spotify. And they almost are becoming like Kleenex in the way that they are now the brand name that is synonymous with streaming. I personally, I have a subscription to Tidal, Tidal. It pays better. It still doesn't pay great, but I'll tell you what, Pete, it's like, you're sort of swimming upstream with this, or at least I am when I try to tell people, hey, think of someone different than Spotify to get your streams from. But they're so big. They've become so good at what they do. They are now the brand. Pete, I wish it were different, but I don't see. I don't know. I guess I haven't, Pete.
In a perfect world, musicians would still be getting paid for creating their music, but it's not a perfect world.
No, it's not.
And you have to adapt, and that's just not the way it is. Technology has fundamentally changed so many businesses. Okay, and those businesses have to adapt. The music industry is no different. It has to adapt.
It's true. And I think as long as we're talking about that, that's a perfect segue into something I want to speak about. And I found this just the other day, that TikTok, we all know it's had a meteoric rise to the preeminent social media platform, but I didn't know it was the number one. And so I found someone talking about why every musician's got to be engaged on it. So of course I did a little research, because I'll admit, Pete, I'm not really all that engaged with TikTok, but I guess I need to be. I don't know how much you interact with it, Pete, but I don't a ton. So I took a look to see some of these artists, these people we cover, these people we know and love. The blues rock canon of artists is not well represented on TikTok. I know it's just one more social media hassle, but I think people in this genre got to get wise. Joe Bonamassa's on TikTok. He's not missing that opportunity. And I think he's been someone who's been a captain of utilizing and taking advantage of social media. Pete, TikTok for you, do you like it? Do you hate it? Or am I trying to convince you that we got to get on this too as individuals? It's where it's at.
I don't have a huge opinion on TikTok, but it's something that I have been studying, and you can see that it is very powerful. And people that have gotten on TikTok, like other platforms, those who adapt early and get on the platform early tend to have the most success. And yes, blues rock review and blues rock as a genre is not really in that TikTok world, but perhaps it should be. Perhaps more of these artists should get on TikTok. If you go to a live blues rock concert, the audience is skewing a lot older.
Yeah.
You look at a platform like TikTok, the audience skews much, much younger. So we wonder, okay, why isn't this music being listened to by more young people? Well, are we going to the area where the young people are?
Right.
So maybe we need to get out on TikTok. Maybe a lot of these artists need to get on TikTok and grow their audience there, because it's an opportunity to get to people who wouldn't necessarily maybe be checking them out otherwise.
Right.
So checking them out, having people check you out on TikTok is probably a good option for a lot of artists right now, because it is an avenue that they aren't really exploring. Personally, there are some things I don't like about TikTok, and I don't necessarily think it's great for society in general, because it is that like no attention span sort of thing. All the videos are super easily digestible. They're like a minute max. But it's kind of that on to the next thing, on to the next thing. It's easily disposable content. It's not something that you're really sinking your teeth into. It's just like, okay, I can watch this really quick. Okay, on to the next thing. That's that instant gratification sort of thing. And you're seeing more and more studies. I think I saw something recently like about Instagram was like installing a feature to limit like kids' time on the platform, because they're just like so addicted to it. And TikTok is sort of that same thing. Is I don't necessarily think it's the most healthy thing being on that platform. I don't know. I mean, I can see its benefits for growing an audience, but Yeah, I'm not personally like a huge fan of it.
But here we are once again. We're sitting here, we're waffling a bit.
Right.
On one hand, we're taking a look and acknowledging objectively, much like Spotify, that, hey, you can sit and shout at the moon all you want, but this is what's going on. But there's that pullback that we're talking about now, where there's part of us where we still feel like Spotify's one step, but TikTok, that's a bridge.
But I mean, that's a great point, Willie, that you just brought up.
I think that here we are again. And so as we're waffling and dithering and questioning, there's a bunch of 15 to 25-year-olds who are not dithering, questioning, or waffling in there, getting right on their phones and checking out the newest acts. And blues rock musicians and blues musicians are not on there. So you cannot be seen on TikTok if you are not on TikTok. I know it's just one more thing in the game, but I think some of these artists, even if it's uncomfortable, gosh, I think they have to. I honestly think that if we're talking about Spotify and TikTok, Spotify, it seems to me like they're never going to pay more. This is how it's going to be. Maybe for the upside in TikTok is you could have a video that somehow gets really big, and maybe that explodes your brand, which is what you want to do. So as awkward as it may be, Pete, I think, here we are again. We're gonna let everything pass us by. The genre is going to let things pass it by and not capitalize on the infusion of this technology, where you got to take the good and the bad and focus on the good. And apparently TikTok is the #1 social media site now. Go figure. That didn't take long.
Well, what do you guys think about TikTok? Are you on the platform? Do you want to see more blues rock artists on TikTok? What are your thoughts? Let us know down in the comments section below. What are your thoughts on Spotify? That's always controversial, right? Let us know down in the comments section below. And what are some albums this year that you think have been flying under the radar? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. And please give us a like. That really helps out with the videos so more people see us in YouTube's algorithm. And we definitely appreciate that. And with that, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Willie Witten, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.